So here's the problem, Quickdraw said, pointing to the schematic. If we assume they've got the lab locked down tight, and I think that's a pretty safe assumption, we really have no way to sneak into that facility without making a lot of noise. So we're just gonna have to get creative. Wolfe frowned. I assume you have some thoughts as to how to get creative? Oh, I've got thoughts, all right. So here's what I'm thinking. They locked down the maintenance shafts that you used last time to get into the lab. But we don't need maintenance shafts, because there's an airlock on the outside. And here he points at the schematic. And there is very clearly an airlock on the outside of the Radiant Council lab. It looks like a standard docking port. And Wolfe, staring at the schematic, says, "That's great and all, Quick, but how are we going to get outside without setting off every alarm on the station?" I'm so glad you asked. We're going to set off a little diversion on the other side of the station. We'll send a couple people. They will detonate some small arms. Nothing too big, nothing that's going to punch any holes in the side of the station, but enough that it'll draw the attention of the Azure Court soldiers. And then we'll make our way outside. We'll do a little spacewalk around to where the Radiant Council lab docking port is, and then we make our way in. Once we're inside, we find them, we get them out the old-fashioned way through the front door. There are so many ways that this could go wrong. And so many ways it could go right. Come on, Havoc, don't you want to take a little spacewalk? It'll be fun, I promise. Besides, you got any better options? Wolfe inhales a deep breath and then releases it slowly, steadily, and says, "Not really." Good. Everybody get your spacewalking gear on. We're gonna have some fun.
Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures, the solo actual play podcast where stories are told at the speed of dice. With me, Steve Morrison, your game master and solo player. Now come on, let's grab the dice and see where our story goes. Welcome back for episode 14 of Season 3, Cry Havoc. Last time, Wolfe was smuggled onto Scirocco Station on a Syndicate freighter along with Quickdraw and a strike force of Syndicate toughs. She and Quick head to the Pulsar 7, a bar on Scirocco, dressed as crew from the freighter. Wolfe chats up the bartender and discovers very little. Meanwhile, Quickdraw tries to get chummy with a few crew from another ship, and there's some sort of disagreement. This draws the attention of Commander Volkov, who interrupts, and Quickdraw makes a show of buying the bar around to ease tensions. He manages to throw Volkov off the scent, and Wolfe evades the commander's notice. They return to the freighter and tap one of Quickdraw's crew to hack into the Azure Court systems. The hack is successful, but the Azure Court is aware their system has been breached. Wolfe learns the scientists are being held within the Radiant Council lab, where they are guarded by at least a dozen Azure Court soldiers, and the maintenance tunnels Wolfe used last time have been secured. Quickdraw, however, has an idea of how they're going to get in. So the plan is to create a diversion and then sneak the strike force outside the station, spacewalk along the exterior, and make their way through the airlock into the Radiant Council lab. It's a bold move, and possibly a little crazy. So let's get into it. The first obstacle is getting a distraction going. So I think Quickdraw is going to send a couple of his crew down to one of the cargo levels to set off some small explosives, possibly to make it look as though it has malfunctioned as opposed to being sabotaged, but at least something to draw the attention of station security towards that area as opposed to paying attention to, a small alert that an airlock has opened up. So I think that because Wolfe is the only one who's actually been on Scirocco Station before, she's going to kind of give them an idea of where those cargo holds are and maybe give them an idea of how they could sabotage them in order to make it look like it wasn't a deliberate action. And I think that we're going to roll up a secure an advantage because they're trying to create a little bit of an advantage before they go into this operation. And I think because Wolfe is kind of talking over some of these specifics with the saboteurs who are going down there, we are going to use wits for this. So wits is +2. Let's just jump right into an action roll. A 4 on the action score, a 7 and an 8 on the challenge dice for a miss. So on a miss, you fail or your assumptions betray you. Pay the price. I don't think I need to roll on pay the price here. It's not boding well how we're starting off, but that's all right. We're going to roll with it. Wolfe walks them through how to sabotage some of the cargo bay doors so that they open up and decompress and blow out some of the cargo that's in there. But what she doesn't realize is that the Azure Court is extra cautious about the cargo bays because there have been a couple of deliveries of maybe fuel or some other resources that are important to the Azure King's mission, and they've been sequestered in the cargo bays. And so there is greater security there than any of them are expecting. And so when these saboteurs go down there to try and sneak in, sabotage the cargo bay doors so they breach open, there are more guards down there than they're expecting, and there are security measures on those doors. A question for the Oracle here is, are those individuals noticed by the Azure Court security? And I think it's probably likely since we did get a miss. So I'm going to say that it is likely. So 75 or less on our Ask the Oracle will be a yes. 15 is a yes. So they make their way down to this cargo bay area, and a couple of the guards notice them and then are kind of like, hey, wait, who are you? What are you doing down here? And the two saboteurs that go down try to break away. And I think we can ask a different question, which is, does this still act as a distraction? And I think the answer is, again, that it's likely that it does. So 75 or less. 94 is a no. Dice are fully turned against me. So with a no, the saboteurs are caught pretty easily. They're cornered, and it does not go well. Because the station is pretty well locked down, I think that is going to mean that they're not communicating. So Wolfe and Quickdraw are expecting some distraction to go off, but they have no way of knowing if it actually goes off. Things are not looking great for the crew as they prepare to head out. Now, the second question is, how are they getting outside in order to make this spacewalk? Because they can't exactly walk through the station halls dressed in their EV suits. So they need somewhere that has a docking port access that isn't just like opening the cargo bay doors here in the docking bay and been like, we're going out for a spacewalk because it'll be fun. So I think probably what it is a maintenance area, because the maintenance tunnels themselves have been locked down, but there are probably hubs around the station where you can access the tunnels, but also there are airlocks where you can get out and move around and maintenance the exterior of the station. They're going to find the nearest one to that. They are going to package all their gear up in maybe a couple of crates or something like that, and maybe pick something where they can break off from the main corridors with their cargo crates and then make their way into this maintenance area. It's late enough that it shouldn't be all that occupied, but they might have to either talk their way past or fight their way past some security personnel there. Why don't we, knowing that they have no distraction covering them, and this is kind of a risky gambit here, why don't we envision what this scene looks like? Wolfe, Quickdraw, and the half dozen other syndicate toughs break away from the main corridor. They're all carrying bags over their shoulders, walking as if they're headed towards the dormitories, like they found a place to stay. They're carrying their gear from the ship with them. It's not unusual for crews to take some time off of ship and stay aboard the station. And so Wolfe and Quickdraw picked a maintenance area that is close to those dormitories, somewhere that they could carry luggage and not look suspicious, at least not until they break away from the main corridors and head down the ancillary corridors towards this particular section's maintenance hub. As they're making their way down there, maybe we should ask the Oracle, what kind of security is at this hub? I think it is not insignificant. So I'm going to say, are there Azure Court soldiers guarding this hub? I'll say 50-50. 52 is a no. So that means that it's not guarded by the Azure Court soldiers, but there are still station security measures on it. So they arrive at this door down this corridor, and because of the Azure Court presence here, I don't think there's a lot of traffic in the corridors. So nobody really comes across them as they're making their way down these slate gray corridors, and they reach the door that leads into this maintenance hub, and the door itself is locked, kind of as they expected. And so their resident hacker, who I did not give a name to last time, but I feel like they are more than likely going to play a part in this adventure. So let's give them a call sign. Fidget. That's perfect. So Quickdraw's like, all right, Fidget, get up there and open those doors. Fidget, who is dressed in kind of a drab coverall with a smaller bag sort of slung over her shoulder, steps forward and pulls out a kit and attaches it to the access panel and begins to get to work on hacking her way through this door. I don't think that she's going to have a problem doing that, but we should ask the Oracle if she's noticed. I think that it is unlikely that she's noticed just because she's had some experience hacking into their systems, and this is, relatively speaking, lower on the priority list. So I'm going to say it's unlikely, so 25 or less. 38 is a no. She hacks into the system, the door slides open, and is the door security the only security there? I think that is unlikely. I think there are probably maintenance workers inside who are overseeing this section. Because what I'm picturing here are these hubs across the station where maintenance supervisors are studying readouts and panels and making sure that they are aware of what is going on in their section of the station and making sure that everything stays operational. So I think there's at least one technician on the inside at all times. So I'm going to say it is likely that there is a technician in here because it's possible that somebody got called away to do something. So let's say likely. 75 or less will be a yes. 32 is a yes. So the door slides open. Wolfe is the first through the door. Quickdraw right behind her. Wolfe sees this technician sitting at a desk looking at several large screens. And he kind of turns and lazily looks over at the door, not really expecting a group of individuals to be barging in. And there is confusion that crosses his face. And he says, can I help you? I think Wolfe immediately recognizes that this person is station personnel and not Azure Court. And so she says, listen, I understand this is highly irregular, but we need to access that port. And she points at the airlock. I don't know how you feel about the Azure Court being on this station, but I, for one, would like to get them off of this station. And I think I can do that, but I'm going to need your help to do so. She is going to attempt to compel. This is plus heart, which is not great for her. It's only a 1 because she is trying to charm, pacify, encourage, or barter. It'd be so much easier if she was threatening, but she's trying to do better. She's trying to be better. So we're going to roll +1 on this. 5 on the action score, 5 and a 9 on the challenge dice for another miss. On a miss, they refuse or make a demand that costs you greatly. Pay the price. This guy has no idea who they are and is not swayed by her words. He's just like, and he goes for the alarm. Now here's the thing. Wolfe is accompanied by a man named Quickdraw. Is Quickdraw fast enough to draw his laser pistol and shoot this technician before the technician can hit the alarm? I think it's likely, unfortunately for this man, because Quickdraw's name is Quickdraw, and it is the thing upon which his reputation is staked. So I'm going to say it's likely that he is fast enough. So 75 or less on our Oracle question here. 12 is a yes. They're standing in the doorway. Wolfe makes this plea. This technician looks at her with confusion, with concern, and then behind Wolfe, Quickdraw says, "Don't you do it." And the man goes for the alarm. Before his hand even rises up from where it was resting on the desk, there's a whisper of metal on leather, and a shot goes off. And the technician spins out of the chair and hits the ground. Wolfe curses and runs over. Is this technician still alive? I think it's unlikely. 79 is a no. Quickdraw did not hesitate and placed a shot right in the sternum of this man. He hits the ground and stares in shock and confusion, and Wolfe rushes over to him and rolls him over onto his back, but it's already too late. The man is dead. And Wolfe looks down at him and then looks back at Quickdraw and says, "Was that completely necessary?" Quickdraw shrugs and says, "Look, did you really want him to alert the whole station? I feel bad for the guy, but he didn't give us a choice. You tried to talk him down, but he just wasn't having it. And you and I both know that in this operation, we're walking on a hair's breadth of a knife here. We do what we gotta do, Havoc. I thought someone like you knew that." Wolfe reaches over and closes the man's eyes and says, "I just wish saying that made it easier. I wish that doing what we had to do didn't involve killing so often. There are casualties in war. Now come on, we've got work to do. We're on the clock." A couple of the syndicate toughs stow the body somewhere, And Fidget slides into the technician's vacated seat and hacks into the system and then looks around and says, "Good to go, Quick. We can access the airlock. Get outside. I'll have to do a manual hack on the other side when we get to the Radiant Council docking bay, but I think we can get in." "All right, everybody suit up." At which point they throw down their bags, they open them up, and they pull out their EV suits and weapons. Wolf pulls out Deathmaker and straps it on to the outside of her EV suit. They seal their helmets, they enter the airlock, and the doors slide open, opening into the void of space. They make their way out into the cold dark, and step by step, they walk their way along the outside of Scirocco Station, heading towards the airlock where the Radiant Council lab is located. And they are on a timeline. They know that their distraction is going to go off soon, and they have to be in place before that happens. At least that's what they think. So they make their way to the airlock outside the Radiant Council lab. Fidget approaches the external panel on the airlock, connects her devices, checks the time. Quickdraw says, "Yeah, should be good to go. Distraction should be popping off right about now." Fidget begins entering sequences. And again, I think that they're going to be able to open this airlock. But again, I'm going to ask the Oracle whether or not they're noticed. And this time I'm going to say it is likely. Because the Radiant Council lab is under lockdown. And it is much more likely to be watched than some random maintenance hub. So we're going to roll our dice, see how this goes for the crew. 72 is just barely a yes. So they are noticed. Because this is kind of a result of the distraction not going off and the fact that the Syndicate toughs are going to be captured and then immediately questioned, I'm going to mark 2 ticks on our clock. This is our 4-part clock of the Azure Court discovering there are intruders. So we're at 2 out of 4 on this, and what that means is that there is an alert that has gone out that this airlock has opened. Maybe somebody has noticed it. Maybe it hasn't quite gone noticed yet, but it's been flagged by the computer system. And so at some point, somebody's going to notice it and start asking some questions. But they are that much closer to being discovered here. They enter the airlock and seal it behind them. And then pressurize and emerge into the Radiant Council lab. Quickdraw turns to Havoc and says, "All right, Havoc, we've gotten you this far. The rest is up to you now. Lead the way." Wolf looks at the others and says, "Let's try to do this with as little bloodshed as possible." "No promises." And they make their way into the Radiant Council lab. And I think we can mark some progress. Help free the Radiant Council from Azure Court captivity? Well, we are that much closer. So I'm going to mark 2 boxes of progress on my vow. That takes us to 6 out of 10. Wolf and the others emerge into a hallway. It's white and smells a little bit like antiseptic. It's also quiet. And Wolf looks around and says, "All right, we need to find where the researchers are." And I think she's going to try to gather some information. She's going to attempt to glean from her schematics and of the station and her recollection of the previous times visiting the Radiant Council lab, where the researchers might be located. Because she hasn't received a full tour of the labs, and she certainly doesn't have schematics for the labs themselves, just the station as a whole. So this will be plus wits, which is +2. Here we go. 6 for the action score, a 6 and a 3 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. I'll take it. The information provides new insight, but also complicates your quest. Envision what you discover, then take a momentum. Our momentum moves up to 5. I think she looks around and she says, all right, this hallway leads off to Dr. Winter's office. That might be a good place to start. But if we go down this way, that's towards where the labs are, if I remember correctly. So it really depends on if we want to see if Dr. Winter is in her office or if we want to try and find the researchers first. She's going to think that over for a moment. And then she says, at this time of night, I'm going to guess that the researchers are in their dormitory. Dr. Winter might be in her office, so let's go there first. So she turns down the right-hand tunnel and begins making her way towards Dr. Winter's office. What Wolfe doesn't know is that there is an Azure Court patrol walking down that same corridor towards them. So they begin making their way down the hallway, Wolfe in the lead, Quickdraw beside her, the others behind. There's a turn in the hallway, and then another turn. They're passing some doors, but they all seem to be sealed. As they're approaching a third turn, and Wolfe, I think, remembers this area because she came this way to get the supplies that Dr. Winter gave her. She starts to hear booted feet and Azure Court soldiers speaking. And she holds up a hand, looks over at a doorway that's close to them, and she makes her way to it and tries to open it. They're going to try and slip into this room silently to evade this patrol. And to do that, we're going to face some danger with Shadow, which is only +1 for Wolfe. Not the sneakiest, our Wolfe. 6 for the action score, a 6 and a 10 for the challenge dice is a miss. You fail, or a momentary success is undermined by a dire turn of events. Pay the price. Well, again, I don't think we need to roll on pay the price. The price here is pretty obvious. The door is locked. Wolfe tries to open it, and then she gestures for Fidget, who comes up and begins fidgeting with the door. But it takes just a moment too long. 4 Azure Court soldiers turn the corner. We're going to mark a third section on our clock. As these Azure Court soldiers see these intruders in the Radiant Council lab, Wolfe draws her sword. Quickdraw draws his laser pistols. The Azure Court don't even hesitate. They raise up their rifles and open fire. So I think because we've got 4 Azure Court soldiers on patrol versus these 8 individuals who are sneaking in, I'm going to go ahead and just roll a battle here. So when you fight a battle and it happens in a blur, envision your objective and roll. If you primarily fight at range, roll plus edge. Fight depending on your courage, roll plus heart. Fighting close to overpower your foe, roll plus iron. Use trickery, roll plus shadow. Fight using careful tactics to outsmart your foe, roll plus wits. Wolfe has drawn her sword, and she runs straight towards these Azure Court soldiers as they realize that there are intruders, and one of them says, "Hey, stop!" Raises their rifles up, and she sprints into the midst of them as Quickdraw open fires past her. We're rolling plus iron. +3 for Wolfe. She is a blade master, but unfortunately that only helps us if we're clashing or striking. So here we go, +3. 7 for the action score, a 10, and a 6 for a weak hit. So not the resounding effort that I hoped, but it is a hit. So we achieve our objective, but not without cost. Pay the price. Let us roll that pay the price. See what fate awaits us. 59. Your equipment or vehicle malfunctions. Equipment or vehicle malfunctions. Well, they're wearing EV suits. And I think there is some armor laden into these EV suits. And it's good that they have it because they take some hits. But I think their suits are compromised by the weapons fire. And they are now no longer able to retreat out through the airlock. Wolfe is in and among these Azure Court soldiers, and her blade is flashing, and one of them goes down as his leg gets cut out from under him, and then she clobbers him across the face with the hilt of her sword as he is knocked unconscious. Quickdraw is there firing shots. The others are also firing shots, and it happens in a blur. In a moment, these Azure Court soldiers fall under a barrage, but there's enough of a commotion, enough of an exchange of weapons fire that a couple of the syndicate toughs are injured in the exchange. Their suits are carved open by laser blasts. Wolfe herself managed to avoid taking any physical harm, but her suit, there's a cut through it as one of the other Azure Court soldiers pulled out a knife as she got in close and got in a lucky slash across her suit and tore it open. The Azure Court soldiers drop to the deck plates, but they're not out of the woods yet. Wolfe turns back to the others and says, "Someone probably heard that. Let's go." And they are going to hurry down the hallway to Dr. Winter's office. Wolfe leads the way down the long corridor to Dr. Winter's office. She reaches it and she gestures to Fidget, who comes forward and hacks the door, sliding it open. Is Dr. Winter here? I think it's likely. 88 is a no with a complication, with a match. Oh, I know what the complication is. The door opens and Wolfe steps into the room looking for Dr. Yelena Winter. But she does not find Dr. Yelena Winter standing inside this office. Instead, there is a figure seated on the couch. A woman dressed in armor with a bare iron sword across her legs. She stands as Wolfe enters the room. Quickdraw raises his pistols, but Wolfe reaches out a hand and stops him and says, "No. She's mine." Vanguard looks at her and says, "Hello, Havoc. So nice of you to return. You left our business unfinished." Havoc looks at her and says, "Van, you're looking pretty good. Looks like you've made most of a full recovery. I'm glad to know that the Azure Court has menders who could take care of you." Vanguard snarls and says, "Don't give me your false kindness, Havoc. You should have finished the job. You should have killed me when you had the chance. I certainly will." Wolfe says, "Van, we've done this once already. We've done this dance and it did not go well. For either of us. Please. We don't have to fight. I'm sorry for whatever happened to the others. I never meant for that to happen. I never meant for them to die. But I don't think they'd want us fighting each other like this. Don't you? Vanguard says. We spent months hunting you. You and your rogue AI. If we'd found you, there wouldn't have been a fight. We would have dragged you back to command. But no. You evaded us. Too long. And our worth ran out. Well, don't worry. Havoc. I'm not taking you back to them. I'm going to send you on to our friends. So that you can see them again. And they can know that their deaths were avenged. Wolf's shoulders droop again, and she says, shaking her head, Vanguard, hasn't there been enough death? Hasn't there been enough sorrow between us? Hasn't there been enough? No, Havoc. Not quite enough yet. And she raises her blade. Wolfe says to Quickdraw, if Dr. Winter's not here, they're probably holding her and the others in the main labs. I understand this is most likely a trap, so I can't ask you to keep going. But if you find her, if you find them, get out. Get out while you can. And thank you.
Havoc, you sure about this? We could just shoot her right now. Be done with it.
No, that would not be the honorable thing to do. She and I have unfinished business. She chuckles for a moment and then says, another fight to see who will survive and who will die. Don't worry, Quick. I'll see you again. Now go. Quickdraw shrugs and backs out of the room. And together, he and the rest of his crew start making their way back the way they came, back towards the junction that Wolfe suggested would lead to the labs. As the door closes behind her, and Wolfe is left alone with Vanguard, Vanguard says, they'll never make it. Wolfe raises her blade and sets herself in a stance and says, they're resourceful. They'll get through. Vanguard shrugs and says, either way, one of us is not leaving here alive. Wolfe looks at her and says, I hope that's not true, Van. I don't want to kill you. I can't say the same, Havoc. And Vanguard attacks. Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures, and thanks so much to Syrinscape for the lovely ambient sounds and music throughout the episode. If you enjoyed the show, please spread the word, and if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, I'm at Errant Solo Pod on Twitter and Instagram, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.